Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We're part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Chip Fridrich. We'll talk Vanderbilt baseball. Let's get right to that. Chip Fridrich joins us as he does during baseball season. Chip was in Memphis this weekend for a soccer tournament, but got to watch or listen to about all of it. Chip, thanks for joining us. Glad baseball is back, and it wasn't the outcome Vanderbilt wanted, but it's underway. And frankly, I left the weekend thinking they've got a pretty good team.
Yeah, good to be with you again, Chris. It was a tough weekend for the Commodores, and like you said, I followed most of it. That's the joy of you can kind of be pretty much anywhere following your team in 2022 in these days, whether it be video or audio, what have you, or up to the minute with Twitter. But yeah, tough weekend for the home team. But you know, you've got to put in perspective. This was not a mid-major, low mid-major they opened up with. This was a team that Tim Corbin in the post-game press conference. And he doesn't throw this out often. He's pretty good at it with his experience, all those years of knowing what it takes to get to Omaha. He doesn't throw those compliments out very often. He said that about UT, and they made it last year. Said that it was an Omaha team, and it might be a little bit early of saying that the first weekend series because things can change. But he did say that in one of the opening statements that this Oklahoma State has the depth of pitching and the power at the plate to make it to Omaha. So this was not a walk-through scrimmage type deal that sometimes some teams will play mid-majors to open up. It threw the challenge out there the first weekend and lost 2 out of 3. But I agree with you. I think you and I talked. I think Tim, his demeanor a lot of times after a game, you can pretty much tell when he's upset with their performance or their mental aptitude, where they are heading into the game after the series, and that Sunday wrap-up interview. And I think taking from his disposition there, I think he knows that he's got a pretty good team, and that Oklahoma State team that took 2 out of 3 is going to be very successful this year in their conference and has a chance to go a long way.
Yeah, I thought he was really going to be hot on Sunday because there were mistakes in the field. There was taking a third strike with your bat on the shoulder to end the game, that kind of thing. But he wasn't that way. In fact, he was calm after Saturday too, and I just felt like his demeanor told me he thinks he's got a pretty good team. Yeah,
and you look at how the games went throughout the weekend. You have the 3-0 shutout on Friday night, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself, and that's the way the things work in the Southeastern Conference too. And this is obviously an SEC caliber type team, comparable team. And then you're playing from behind the rest of the weekend in those games. It seemed like the game on Saturday started off with Oklahoma State getting a 2 spot against Maldonado, and then you're continually just kind of playing on your heels, which in this league and when you're playing the elite teams is something that's hard to do with the power pitching that you're going to face. And the same thing on Sunday with the 7-5 loss. So it was a weekend that could be characterized as one that things kind of seemed like they were at the end of the year, little haunting nightmares of some things at the plate that continually seemed to come up. There were some things in the pitching department as well that reminded you of last year, and that might be the disconcerting thing if you're a Vanderbilt fan looking at it, that it seems like a lot of plate discipline was lacking. And I talked about this in Omaha when we did the season wrap up last year, Chris, was that it really, you know, the first game in Omaha against Mississippi State, I'm talking about the 3-game series at the end, Vanderbilt, you know, dominated that game. You had Leiter on the mound, feeling pretty good about yourself, and then Mississippi State wins game 2. But the deciding factor between the two teams to me was game 3. You had a team in Mississippi State, and I told you this last year, that was scrappy, that fouled pitches off, that protected the plate, that didn't get fooled, that didn't take strike threes, compared to a Vanderbilt team that seemed like it was guessing a lot on counts. taking strike three several times, not being as disciplined at the plate. And the guessing part, and, people can say what they want about today's world and being launch angles and semantics and people worrying about this and that and the analytics of baseball and the swing and breaking that down. But sometimes it gets to the point that if you're taking a lot of strike three pitches, if you're in the defensive part of hitting when you're 0-2, 1-2, and sometimes 2-2, when you're sitting there and you're trying to guess on those instances when you're hitting, I don't know if they're doing that. I'm not 100%, but it sometimes makes you wonder, when you guess and you're right, you can hit the ball to West End Avenue. But when you're guessing in defensive counts like we saw this weekend, it really makes you look silly at the plate. And I think some of these guys this weekend, perhaps, and we'll just have to see how it goes. It's a 3-game sample. But there are a lot of things hearkening back at the plate that I saw that have me a little worried, not troubled, and not, where I'm saying, this is going to be a disaster, but it's things that can be fixed. But you look at the strikeouts for the weekend. We struck out 9 times on Friday night, on Saturday 12 times, and we struck out 14 times on Sunday. Now, having said that, Oklahoma State struck out themselves 18 times on Friday night. Yeah. They struck out 11 on Saturday, and they struck out 16 on Sunday in the game they won. I would just think that this team has a lot of ability, and some of the players with Bradfield, and you have Vaz, and you have guys who seem like they could be guys who could slap the ball and not guess. And we'll just have to watch and see the rest of the season, and especially early on here, and see how they make adjustments in that category.
Yeah, boy, a lot of stuff to unpack there. First of all, I wondered about Oklahoma State's pitching. Now, Aaron Fitt, who is a good friend of mine, and frankly, I think Aaron is as good at his job as anybody I know in the sports media business, and a wonderful human being on top of it. I'm glad I got to spend some time with Aaron this weekend. Aaron put a bullseye on Oklahoma State's chest by naming that the number 1 team in the country, or not the number 1 team, his pick to win in Omaha. And you look at the pitching, you look at the ERAs and the kids coming back, and you're like, I don't know. Then you see them pitch, and they're all 93, 94, 95, 96 with secondary pitches. And so some of these kids are just, it's that typical freshman to sophomore jump. The Medeiros kid is certainly that way. Trevor Martin looks like a better pitcher. Like, they had a lot of those guys that just take that jump. And you see this at Vanderbilt some too. Like, you're seeing it with some of the arms they threw. So I thought, number one, that was a very, very legit pitching staff. Very legit. Probably a top 10 staff in the country kind of staff. So there was that. But yeah, I'm with you. The hitting, the inability to do different things and just put the ball in play was a big thing. And I mean, Parker Nolan and Carter Young just didn't hit the whole weekend. Keegan was up and down. It just seemed to me like 1, 2, 3 guys hit, 7, 8, 9 guys hit, and 4, 5, 6 is where it just broke down time and time again, because those are the guys you're counting on to deliver big hits into big spots. And other than a couple times with Keegan, they just didn't.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at Keegan, Young, and Nolan went 4 for 33 on the weekend. Those are 3 guys who this team is counting on to give them some positive offensive numbers. But it's a very short sample size, and it is easy for people to panic and do that this early. But you got to understand, you got to put it in perspective of, just like you said, the pitching staff. I mean, you're talking about Justin Campbell on Friday night, who took the losses. I mean, his stuff and his accolades, they're talking about him being a very high draft pick. And it is true, that jump you talk about. We can say there are countless number of Vanderbilt pitchers through the years that have made that jump between freshman, sophomore year, or sometimes even sophomore to junior. They go to the Cape, they come back with loads of confidence, and next thing you know, they're in the rotation, and they're getting accolades, and they're going to be high draft choices. So Yeah, it's when you look at it on paper, there's some things that obviously from the plate, and I'm sure they'll get it done. It's raining now, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to play tonight or Wednesday. But it's important to get these games under your belt, get these guys back on the horse, so to speak, and confidence-wise as they head into Army this weekend. But there's still a lot of baseball to play. You can look at it two perspectives, Chris. You can say, let's play some low mid-major and sweep and do that, and it's freezing cold, and you kind of sitting there going, well, what do we really know about yourself? Well, you know a whole lot about yourself after this weekend facing the pitchers and the hitters that they did this weekend, and I think looking back on it, and I firmly believe that sometimes coaches would rather know where they are than kind of sit there and say, well, we played well, we got a sweep, but do we really know where we are and what we need to work on?
Yeah, you see a lot of teams that are boat racing teams, 11-2 and 13-1 and 15-6 on these weekend games. And by my experience, that doesn't tell you anything. I know that the outcome wasn't what people wanted, and my concern a little bit is their schedule this year. They're going to have a hard time racking up a lot of marquee wins until probably April. I mean, I'm looking in South Carolina and Tennessee, if they get series wins there, I think that'll move the needle with the committee. But they're not playing anybody else out of conference that you're going to look up come Selection Sunday and go, well, wow, they took a series from these guys or that guys or those guys. You know, they open with Missouri, and then they go to South Carolina, Tennessee, but Auburn, I mean, that Florida, okay, that gives them a shot at one at Kentucky. Probably not going to help them much. A&M, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm probably overdoing it a little bit, but my point is it's those big series wins that get you cachet with the committee, and that's an opportunity that they miss that, like, if it comes down to them or Oklahoma State for, say a 4 or 5 national seed or something like that, that's something that will get held against them a little bit long term, is that they didn't win that series. Other than that, there are some other concerns, but that's probably, like, of all the bad outcomes of the weekend, that's probably the worst thing that went against them. But again, they'll have a chance to make some of those up later.
Yeah, and I think above all, if anything, the dose of reality, the cold water in our face this weekend was that, you had Leiter and Rocker are no longer in that dugout. Not that you didn't know that, but man, that was a luxury for a 2-year period, 3-year period. That really, that you knew how good they were, and we talked about it, that things were going to be different on the pitching mound. But gosh, that was a tremendous luxury that this team had, and you just got to build from it, and you've got to throw people out there and get them experience, just like you do the position players. Because if there's only way these guys can grow up and you can do all that escalation, you want as far as throwing guys out there, but and talk about their accolades. For instance, with Carter Holton on Sunday, he's great for 3 innings and then has the blow up and the 3 walks, and you look at his line, and the first 3 were golden, and then he gets in trouble in the 4th frame, and those are just situations that you can't practice it. You cannot practice putting someone out there in a scrimmage or in the black gold game and say, this is what it's going to be like, when you're in front of 3,800 people and in a clutch game against a team like Oklahoma State. So they'll learn. And as far as your comment about, it's when they play those teams that they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. I think that's one instance. I think the committee from their past that helps them. I know the past doesn't matter to Tim and this coaching staff. Every game and every team is built differently, and you have to earn your accolades and your wins and your advancement on your own. But this team and this league, I think, is so strong top to bottom that they'll get the benefit of the doubt on when it comes down to it. And it's just going to be a little different. We talked about that last week. You got to get used to it and build on it. And I think this team has the moxie to do so. It's just going to have to be done a whole lot differently.
This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast is made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville, And just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. And what people like about the experience is the ambiance. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. I went in and looked at it myself. That's exactly what it is. It is a relaxing, friendly environment. So whether your dental needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody. Call him at 615-270-2322. His office is located at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown Nashville, not far from the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player, a huge booster of Commodore athletics. His support as the title sponsor for Season 7 is the reason we are able to do this podcast. Go see Dr. Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of the Vandy Sports Podcast and tell him you heard about it here. Yeah, I'm looking at some things on the stat sheet, and I think this really boils down where the big difference was. I know people are frustrated with Vanderbilt's hitting, but let's look at this. Vanderbilt's on-base percentage for the weekend, 327. OSU's was 304. Vanderbilt strikeouts on the weekend. It struck out 35 times as hitters. Oklahoma State struck out 45. Vanderbilt walked 12 times. OSU walked 11 times. Slugging percentage, Vanderbilt 383, OSU 317. So both teams scored 11 runs for the weekend. What was the difference? Well, you look at that E category. Vanderbilt made 3, Oklahoma State didn't make any. And then, in addition, frankly, there were a couple more plays that could have easily gone as errors that didn't. That was the thing that stuck out to me, was just Oklahoma State locked it down in the field all weekend. I don't really remember any mistakes. With Vanderbilt, it was those errors. It was Dom Keegan, and I hate to point a finger at him. And in his defense, he was playing catcher 2 days and then back at first the next day. So I'm guessing he just wasn't taking as many reps there at first as he was last season. But a ball gets under his glove to start a rally, I think, in the ninth. And then another one, he makes a leaping play for it. It ticks off his glove, goes into right. You know, they make one of those two plays, the complexion of that inning is different. Parker Nolan on a ground ball that's hit to him, gosh, I think to start the game on Friday or Saturday, I don't remember which, boots it, no error charge because it was a tough play, but that's one you just got to make. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I think that will resolve, right? Because if there's one thing about Tim, if you're not defending your position, you're not going to play, and they've got other guys. But that was something that of all the things I wanted to see better over the weekend, I think defense might have been number one on the list. Yeah,
agreed. And those have been sort of trademarks of Tim Corbin's teams over the years, is having that. And, what impressed me as far as what Oklahoma State did in Game 3, and it changed the whole concept and the context of the weekend, I should say, is Vanderbilt puts the 2 spot up in the bottom of the 8th, ties it. It's 5-5, and Oklahoma State did exactly what teams in the past for Vanderbilt did, and championship caliber, mentally tough teams. They come right back in the 9th after Vanderbilt answers, the crowd's into the game, and they get the single to start off down the right field line. Thompson doubles, it in a great at-bat for him, and they answered. And that was the key component to me, that they answered immediately. It seems like Vanderbilt teams over the last several years, the really good ones, when a team responds, whether it was at home or away, they were able to get that. And if they get the first out in the ninth, the top of the ninth, if Vanderbilt comes back, gets them out of that inning, we score, get a win, get a walk-off, whatever, it changes your whole complexion of the weekend, how you feel about it. You say, well, we took 2 out of 3 from a really good Oklahoma State team, and they're in the top 10, feel good about ourselves, and instead it just leaves the bad taste in your mouth, and that's the way baseball works. That's why, the 3-game series, you got to get all 27 outs, and that's not what happened this weekend as far as stopping them. So it was a close series. Looking back on it, they look like 2 teams in the strikeout category that it was their first weekend, and I think that'll change as the hitting kind of heats up here, the weather gets better. But When you take a step back and look at it, which I think Tim was already doing on Sunday in his postgame, is there's a lot of games to be played, and I think he as we talked about at the beginning, I think he knew exactly how Josh Holliday's team it looks to perform and is projected to do the rest of the year.
Well, let's talk about, I thought, the biggest positive of the weekend, and that was pitching depth. I thought McIlvain's start was tremendous. 10 strikeouts, 1 walk, 4 innings. I thought that Grayson Moore in relief was fantastic. 5 strikeouts, 1 walk, and 3 innings. Only faced 10 hitters. That's a big deal. Hunter Owen gave up 5 hits and a run that was earned in 3 innings, but that was some tough luck balls that his teammates just didn't make plays on in some cases, or balls that weren't hard hit that just found spots. Struck out 6. I thought he looked great. Christian Little pitched an inning, so-so, but got out of it without a run. Jack Anderson's 1 inning was way better than I expected. He struck out 3 and walked a hitter. Nelson Berkwich pitched a clean inning, looked really good. I just thought you looked across the rotation, Patrick Riley's start or his relief appearance. 4 innings, he did walk 4, but the fastball was really good. They got 1 hit off him. He struck out 7. And even Carter Holton, whose final line wasn't good, was just flat out the most dominant arm they had in a spurt. I mean, he comes out the first inning, gets strikeouts on 95, 96, 96. Just is shoving the fastball at them. He had that 1 bad inning, which I think is uncharacteristic. I think the thing we wondered is, do they have enough arms? Like, once you get past 2, 3, 4 top arms, was there the depth there? And I thought, to me, that first weekend, watching those kids pitch, and again, 45 strikeouts to 11 walks, that's great against anybody. That's phenomenal against Oklahoma State. To me, that is where I left the weekend feeling a lot better about who they are.
Yeah, I will say that McIlvain's line, the 10 strikeouts, 1 walk was a great performance by him. I was really impressed with the way he got ahead in the count, stayed ahead, pumped strikes, pitched to contact. I thought his version of himself changed his body a little bit, I think. It's been added, and I think that was on the off season, and I think that will benefit him. Riley, Riley's got a really live arm, Chris. We know that.
Oh, my goodness. That fastball is elite. Yeah.
It really explodes out of his hand. There's a difference between being wild and wildly, effectively wild, so to speak. And he has the ability to do that. I still would like to see his walk numbers cut down, and I think he'll get there. But he has the experience. He's still a young kid. I think he's got 35, 40 innings under his belt before this outing, and as far as game 1. I felt good about him. I don't know, Chris, if Thomas Schultz is going to be the closer. I think Thomas is a very good pitcher and is going to help this baseball team. He came in game 1 and 3. I don't think he has an effective knockout punch like a Maldonado would, that it has had, or what this team has been used to. And I feel like what you need in this conference to be effective when you got 1-run leads, 2-run leads. But he got the ball twice this weekend, and that's at least what they were thinking. He's the only guy who got the ball twice. So as far as the Maldonado, and I think it's funny that some people just, the Maldonado experiment, quote unquote. I don't know if it's an experiment. I've had several people ask me that, like, is this an experiment? I think that this will go for maybe a couple weekends and they'll make a decision. I don't think you can call the first game that he pitches and just revert back to him that he seems like he's more of the closer still to me, Chris. It is difficult to go back and say, here's a guy who threw a lot late in games last year and you're going to do this. But I don't think it's going to be a quick hook while we're going to bury this and we're not giving him another opportunity against Army this weekend to go back out there. Gave up the 2 spot early and battled back and struck out 3, walked 1. 68 pitches. That's more pitches probably than he's thrown in the last 3 outings combined if you go back to last year. So, but there were some good signs there on the mound. Holton, as we talked about, I think Tim said that Oklahoma State kind of got him out of his rhythm, which young pitchers tend to get when you get another team and they see a rookie on the mound, they're going to try to mess with him and upset his rhythm. And he had a very quick rhythm to begin with. But I think that was the main thing that the pitching staff and Tim Corbin identified, that Oklahoma State got him out of his rhythm. He'll just learn from that, and a learning experience. So Christian Little, not really to talk about other than, the 1 inning. We'll see how that goes. I'm sure that he was going to get more action midweek. That was the plan. And as you mentioned, Hunter Owen striking out 6, walking none, throwing 46 pitches. I was impressed with that. So overall, for the staff, for the 3, 7, 10 guys he threw, because Schultz threw twice, I thought it was good to get all those guys out there, and nothing really to write home about other than he had some guys throwing strikes in the strikeout numbers, and nothing hugely glaring as of yet, other than my comment that I'm not so sure if Schultz is going to be the guy in May. Could be, but we'll just have to monitor that and see how that finishes up.
Well, sometimes it is about how the pieces are arranged. And look, Tim has done this just about every year. Like, you remember the year that Jared Miller starts in the rotation and Buehler's pitching on Tuesdays, and Fulmer, I think, starts the season in the bullpen, and then by the time you get to Omaha, that looks a lot different. And Miller's, their 4th, 5th guy out of the bullpen or whatever he wound up being. And I'll go back to 19, too, because everybody all year, the thing was, I don't know if you can win with Fellows as your number 1 starter. And you had Rocker. I don't remember, was Rocker pitching on Saturdays or Sundays that year?
He was pitching on Saturdays, game 2.
Yeah, okay, game 2. And then you had Raby pitching game 3, and you had Mason Hickman pitching on weekdays. Well, you look up, and I said all it takes is rearranging the pieces a little bit, right? And they flipped Hickman into Raby's spot, which strengthened their rotation by a factor of probably 3 immediately, or that spot in the rotation. And I always said, like, if you rearrange the pieces and you go, well, Rocker's your 1, maybe Hickman's your 2, and Fellows is your 3, you're going, well, my goodness, Fellows is a phenomenal 3, and Hickman is a great 2, and Rocker is good ace as anybody's got. You just the way that you arrange the pieces, it looks a lot different, even though the names are basically the same. I think you've got that potential with this pitching staff, and hear me out on this, okay? I think that, and we don't know if it's going to come this year or not with Riley, but it might. And let's say it pops and the control falls into place. I think you could make him your 1 or 2, and maybe even Holton's your Friday night guy at some point. It wouldn't surprise me. And I think McIlvain, I thought he looked tremendous. His fastball was way better than I'd seen it. And it wasn't really the velo so much, although I think he did hit 96 on a pitch or 2, but he was 92, 93 for the most part. But the movement, I was sitting next to the TrackMan guy, and that ball was really doing some stuff according to the data. So I think you look at it and you go, maybe Holton or Raby is your 1 and 2 in some order, and maybe McIlvain is probably at that point as good a 3 as anybody's got. You look great. You talk about Schultz in the bullpen. I don't think Schultz is going to end the season as their closer. I think it's either going to be Moore or Maldonado. And by the way, I just completely disregarded Maldonado as a rotation piece. It wasn't intentional. But my point is, you could throw Maldonado back in the closer's role. You know what you're getting. All of a sudden, you've checked that box. Your rotation looks great, probably, if Riley can throw some strikes. Oh, you got Little, maybe is your weekday 4 to try to work through his issues. And I think Schultz is a usable piece. He's not an in-game guy to me, because I don't think he's got an out pitch. But Schultz was pretty good in that first appearance, and I think he's a kid who's thrown strikes before. He can give you 1, 2, maybe 3 good innings just by the fact he's throwing strikes. I think he's a kid that you can use as a bridge guy on weekends, maybe in that 6th or 7th inning. Then all of a sudden, and look, we haven't even seen Bradley or Futrell or some other guys pitch that can probably help them too. then all of a sudden you look at it, and I think you can find a scenario where everybody's got a natural spot and a role and it all works. And I just think, to me, that was the biggest thing I took away is, you look at some of the roles, and I don't know that they fit, but I think if you rearrange the parts, to me, it sure looked like they've got enough of them. And I think that's going to be huge for them this year, especially postseason. And that's where they ran out of gas last year, right? After Rocker and Leiter and Maldonado, there just wasn't much left. But I think this year, it seems to me they left the weekend with 8, 9, 10 really usable pieces that you could use in Omaha or wherever else potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the tea leaves read, Chris, to me, just from checking it out and not being at every workout and not seeing these guys throw a bullpen, is that like a combination of Riley, Holton, Little for your rotation. I think you said that. And then having Maldonado in the pen. I mean, you got Little has all the talent in the world. You just question whether if he's able to go out there. He's had the experience in Omaha. He's super, super talented. And I'm not saying that it's there for his taking, but you would think that if he can get it together mentally and throw strikes and get out there, the talent's super there for him to be a starter. Holton showed in the first 3 innings why this staff trusted him to be out there as a freshman so early. I talked about last weekend, if some of the listeners didn't listen, that has not happened even to a Sonny Gray. I don't think David Price started on the weekend until it was the Alabama series, and I want to say it was week 2 of the SEC, I think.
And that might have even been early. Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, so that is a privilege that has not been given by this coaching staff to very many pitchers. And then Riley's just the potential there as far as the ball, how it explodes out of his hand. Those are 3 good names, and there's others on there too. Schultz, to me, looks like that role that Hickman had for so long midweek, where he racks up 8, 9, 10 wins during the week, just mowing people down. Now, not saying he couldn't help on the weekends, but I'm just saying on paper that's what it appears to the casual observer. So, but they'll rearrange the chairs on the deck, so to speak, the next couple weeks, and that's what these games are for, and for us to debate them and see what we see. But I think that there's enough talent there to get the job done and have this team advance. But you just got to remember, it's the luxury before people want to jump off the Siegenthaler Bridge. Look what happened to Mississippi State this weekend. I mean, come on.
They looked bad their first 2 games. Well, in the mound, they looked good on game 1, but the lineup got 1 hit. They give up 14 hits on the Saturday game. So, that's a team that had some issues this weekend.
Yeah, and Florida gets beat by Liberty. There was it twice, right? If I'm correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So there's some things going on. They have the big national championship vibe in Starkville going on. They lose 2 out of 3, and so they're feeling a little different about themselves. So a lot of ball to be played, and a lot of things for us to debate. But I think there's no question that the talent's there, and these arms will develop. Brownie is highly capable, more than highly capable. He knows what he's doing, and these guys see him every day, and we don't know what's going on in the locker room. We don't know what's going on with the attitudes, work habits, and to second guess for us, not knowing that, it would just be just second guessing, and we got to let it play out.
I'll tell you what I think Schultz is. I think Schultz is like their 2014 John Kilichowski.
I can see that.
Yeah, just the guy that doesn't wow you when he's out there, but he can throw strikes and get some outs. And again, if the defense goes differently, that in line looks different for him. But I think he's maybe your 8th, 9th guy on one of their elite type staffs where there's a role. I just don't know. I don't know that it's the one they're in. Hey, one other thing before we get to the mailbag, and I can't believe we've gone 33 minutes without talking of either of these guys. Offensively, I thought Javier Vaz and Spencer Jones were phenomenal. Vaz has a .636 on base for the weekend, hits a home run, hits a double. Jones, hits 417 /462 /667, but even when he was making outs, he was a tough out. The at-bats were more competitive. Vaz is going to have to move up from the 8-hole. I mean, I know what they're trying to do there. I'm to the point where I'm almost like hit Bradfield and Vaz 1 and 2. And I was a little concerned about Enrique because you saw some of the same stuff where he struggled a year ago. I think you pitch him off speed off the plate sometimes. He has some issues, and we saw that week 1. Now, he did figure that out a year ago and make some adjustments. But I thought that Vaz and Jones, to me, my good, and especially Jones. Jones had the look of a hitter who can carry you, which was his rep coming in. We just hadn't seen it because 2020 got canceled. He was hurt to start last year, and I don't think ever got in a groove. But those guys, I could not have been more impressed with either one of them this weekend.
Yeah, they both had good weekends, and it was good to see. Vaz just worked and clawed his way into the lineup last year towards the end, impressed the coaches, which sometimes teams have that. And Corbin teams often have that late in the year. Somebody appears out of nowhere and ends up starting, and then the next thing you know, they're in the starting lineup in Omaha. But I was glad to see those two guys, and I agree with you on Jones. He's got the stature at the plate to be a big-time threat. We'll have to see about. I agree with you. I know what they're trying to do with Vaz in the lineup, but we'll have to see if that makes sense to move him up.
He's too good to hit in the 8-hole right now. Just too good.
Not too worried about Bradfield. I think he will be fine. He's the sample size is too small, but I think that kid has a lot. Getting on base is however he can and be a threat because he's basically standing on second when he gets on first. So I agree with your comments on those guys, how they performed, and it'll be good to follow them the next couple games.
You ready for the mailbag?
Sure, let's go.
The mailbag is presented by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call. That number 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Dusty Orleans says, it's tough when the bats don't support you, but what were your thoughts on the good, the bad, and the ugly of Maldonado's start?
It was a totally different role that we talked about, and the first time out, you hearken back to what he did really, really well last year, so that's fresh on your mind, right? You know that he had that role last year, but I just think the as far as the good is concerned, he came back after that first inning, although he gave up 3 in the first 2 frames, 2 in the first, 1 in the second. 68 pitches, see how he recovers. And that's the main thing you want to do when a pitcher hasn't been used to throwing that number of pitches, how he recovers. But I didn't see all that thing to sit there and get concerned about other than giving up 3 runs. His strikeout total in 4 innings, 3 was decent. I think it's just I'm a grade and an incomplete. I'm not going to give him a grade of B, C, D, anything like that. It certainly wasn't his A game, but I think I want to see a little bit more before I answer that question because I think it's just too early, and there wasn't anything that just jumped off the page to me, Chris, to critique it just in 4 innings and 60-something pitches.
Yeah, I've got a log. I try to keep velo logs of what guys are throwing, what pitches, and sometimes I get all those and sometimes I don't. And with Nick, I got probably 3/4 of his pitches recorded, but I'm looking at this. Looked like the fastball first inning was 90 to 93, with a couple of 92s in there. That's about where he sat. Last inning looked like he was going, or last one I recorded, 3rd inning fastball was going, looks like 90 to 91, so not a lot of dip between innings 1 and 3. And, of course, Nick pitched some longer stints last year in the postseason where I think he threw 40, 50, 60 pitches. So this is nothing entirely new. The thing with me, and I asked Tim Corbin about it, and he just said he caught too much plate, if I remember that right. Maldonado walked 6 guys a year ago in 50-something innings, which is elite. Sometimes a guy like that throws strikes, that's the good and bad of it. I mean, 9 times out of 10 you'll take it, but sometimes there's that 1 time out of 10, where your strike catches a certain part of the plate, and if you miss by a little bit, it catches a lot of the plate. I think really that's my concern with him, and that's it. It's just when you're a strike thrower, sometimes that bites you in certain spots, and that was kind of the way I believe Tim Corbin saw it.
Yeah, and same thing kind of happened to Holton. He was in a groove on Sunday and gets a pitch out over the plate after getting into his rhythm, and his rhythm gets disrupted in the fourth. So I think that happened to somewhat. Baseball's a funny game. You're only as good as your last pitch and the last out you get sometimes, and I think that happened to both those guys, Holton and Maldonado. But I don't think there's anything to this. Is not a screeching red fire alarm blaring that something's wrong. I think they're going to sit there and give it, maybe 1, 2, 3 more starts before they think about doing something.
Next one, also from Dusty Orleans. It seemed clear that Holton's velocity dropped after about the third. Is it possible the staff wanted him to experience some adversity and see how he worked through it rather than pull him early? I've got some context for the question. I'm sitting here looking at the pitching log. He was 94 to 96 the entire first inning with the fastball, which is what he threw for the majority of the first 2 innings. In fact, in the second, literally every pitch was a fastball. That was ending a string where he threw 20 straight fastballs until he threw what I think was a changeup to start the third, or maybe a curveball. I'm not sure. So, yes, by the time he got to the third, well, I don't know. The fastball was still 95, 96 in that inning. And in the fourth, it dipped to 93, 94, 92 to start the inning. But his last 2 fastballs he threw were 95 and 94. So really not a huge velo dip. I guess 1 to 2 miles an hour. So I don't know how concerning that is. At that point, they were mixing in a lot more off-speed stuff with him. Again, he started, and I think it was Rock Riggio with some off-speed stuff, because I think Riggio can hit a fastball pretty well. But sorry, that's a long-winded preamble before I give you a shot to answer the question, but there's some context for what he's asking.
Yeah, I think that it was completely talked about after the game about rhythms and getting him out of his rhythm, and that's a big deal when you're playing. In a high school game and there's 100 people in the crowd, and then you're playing with 3,800 people. It's a lot different, and there is some truth to that you have seen some coaches where it's like a basketball coach who says, we're going to let this team play out of it. We're going to, a team goes on a run, 8-0 run, 10-0 run, and the coach turns to his assistants and says, I'm going to let them play this thing out and see what they got in their, what kind of moxie they have. And I think there is something to be said to let a young pitcher like that experience some discomfort as far as a pressure situation. It happens all the time. And then you got to know when to pull the trigger. If he goes 3 innings, he comes out, doesn't come out for the fourth, they go to the pen, he has a totally different perspective. And yes, he feels good about it, but he didn't work through that adversity. So a little bit of both, but that does happen. I will say that for sure. There's something to be said for you got to let guys be in some situations where they, their heartbeat needs to be checked, and they got to work themselves out and slow it down somewhat to where they're not leaving balls over the plate. And that's what happened to Holton. Just seemed like he got, his velocity, as you said from your numbers, were not all that drastic. In fact, they were, if according to your numbers, they were a mile or two faster in some instances in that fourth inning.
Dusty Orleans says, how would you try and contain Enrique Bradfield Jr. once he reaches base if you were back on the mound?
Yeah. I'd balk
Prayer?
a lot. I would, but no, you've seen it. You've seen the strategy. Teams will throw over there 15 times. There's going to be guys, I think, from a left-handed perspective, you see a guy test the umpire. What does it hurt to, that balk line of whether it be a balk or not, and seeing how far you can go. But varying your looks is important, and you'll see guys throughout the year and their strategy with Enrique Bradfield Jr. is to vary their looks, slide step. There are rules about quick pitching where you got to come to a stop. but you cannot get Bradfield in a rhythm whatsoever. And he's so good, even as a sophomore, of learning. And those guys watch tape and they know as far as moves are concerned and how quick those moves are to first. But you just, as a pitcher, you do the same thing 3 times in a row. He's going to steal in the third, and he's going to be there in the second anyway. Left-handed pitchers got to sit there and not get to the point where you're afraid to get a ball called on you, because that can be highly effective if you've got a great move. So it's rhythm, it's cadence, it's stepping off. It's not letting Bradfield get into a mode over there where he's looking for one thing. And sometimes you will see he's fast enough, Chris, that he'll go on first move sometimes. And if you go on first move and you've got a big enough lead, which he gets out there. I mean, his leads are when you got that much speed. And sometimes if he gets enough jump on first move, which is first move the pitcher makes, you're going no matter what. He sometimes can beat it down to second base, beat the throw from the first baseman down to second. Not always, but if it's quick enough. So that's what I would do. A lot of prayer too, as you mentioned, and not getting him on base to begin with. But that's a problem that a lot of people are going to have in the SEC is trying to contain him, and we saw that last year.
VU Titans asks, as a pitcher, how frustrating is it when the catcher cannot catch the foul tip on the third strike?
I didn't really get all that worked up about things like that. I mean, it's such a hard art to do. There's a lot of spin on balls when they come off the bat, when it goes back to a catcher on a bang-bang situation. So, moderately frustrated, but it wasn't anything that when I pitched, it was I thought about and lingered and just got to get back on the bump and throw it again. So, yes, I mean, you can look and tie things together in a game like, if they would have caught that third strike, just like if someone would have caught a foul ball along the foul line that's along the rail, and it goes into the stands and the next guy hits a bomb. It's easy to, and I don't know if you saw, did you see, Chris, did you see the East Carolina game, the highlight from the East Carolina game? And I'm digressing here, but East Carolina and somebody yesterday.
Let's see. They were playing Bryant, I believe.
Bryant. A guy hits a bomb. Speaking of like things that you can go back on and what happens, a guy hits a bomb, a walk-off bomb for East Carolina in the bottom of the ninth. And, I mean, clearly massive shot. He's going around first base and doesn't realize that right before the pitch, the umpire on first had called time.
Oh, no.
And he called time because he said he couldn't see. The sun was in his eyes. That was his explanation. He said, and so the pitcher's in his windup in the stretch. He raises his hands up clearly and calls time, and then the guy hits the bomb. And he's running around the bases, and the umpires Cliff Godwin goes bananas. And Bryant ends up winning the game in extra innings. So anyway, I digress. But talking about, what could have been drop third strikes, the close plays. But if anybody, there's a highlight of it on Twitter if you can find it. It's I think it's on that John Boy. Twitter that he always finds those things, but it happened yesterday. So
that wasn't even the most notable home run thing of the weekend. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, let me know. What are you talking about?
Did you see the guy at Chapman University, wherever that is?
What happened? No, what happened?
He hits a bomb in a game, and it hadn't been off the bat a second and a half, and he takes his bat and he holds it up to his eye with the knob to his eye like he's looking through the telescope to watch it leave the park.
Oh, God. These celebrations at the plate, the bat flips are getting to be pretty entertaining. And let me just say this, as I digress one more time. If you're a Twitter follower and you're a college baseball fan, and I think you know what I'm going to say, Chris, because I think you follow him. I'm not sure if you do. If you don't, you need to immediately. The guy, Stephen, is it Skullich, the Virginia pitcher?
Stephen Schock. Yes. My goodness. Yes. I followed him this weekend. His tweets were fantastic. He was Virginia's closer a year
Right.
ago. I don't know if he's gotten into the sports media business or what. I don't see on his bio that he's got a podcast or anything, but he's great.
Yeah, if it's Stephen with a P, Stephen, and it's Schoch is his last name. And he's the reliever for Virginia last year on their run that they had. I think he's a JUCO guy who came to Virginia. I'm not sure. Heavy guy, great personality. You know, when they were interviewing after game, and he was talking about what he was going to eat after. He was just a very eccentric dude. I mean, he's following college baseball this year. Some of it will not make sense to some listeners because it's really catered to. I mean, it's catered to college baseball fans. But a lot of what he talks about, like eating breakfast on the road and stuff that happens on the bus, it's really like if you're a former player. I was howling watching Twitter this weekend because I just scrolled down to his last, and he's on there 10, 11 times a day. He has highlights, he has videos. So if you're a baseball fan, I want to give that guy a plug because he's entertaining, and he's talking about Vanderbilt's watches. He's already on. He's not making
that was
fun of
funny.
Vanderbilt watches,
yeah.
But he has a picture of a watch, and he said, "Hey, I just found out. I just found a story about Vanderbilt's watches, a picture of him, and it's a picture of a big watch, and of course he's inserted in the text. It's throw strikes, dummy."
Yeah. Yeah, that was so good. That was one of the best tweets I saw of the weekend.
So anyway, thought I'd add that. Sorry to digress so much.
No, his Twitter account is at BigDonkey47. It is very much worth a follow.
Yeah, Big Donkey. That's right, Big Donkey 47, and he's got, and this is just amazes me. He has 47,000 followers.
Yeah.
So
goodness.
He needs to be like. They need to have him. He needs to have a podcast or something because he doesn't really. He's sort of so eccentric that he doesn't. He's kind of embarrassed a little bit when he's on camera. When they'd interview him, he kind of sways his head a little bit, but he's really, really, really clever. So check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of that, NBA Door asks your thoughts on the new pitching system.
Oh, the watches?
Yeah. But by the way, I looked this up. Game times for those 3 games, 2:53, 3 on the dot, 3 on the dot. So it did seem like game flow was a little better. It hadn't occurred to me until I looked it up. But, I mean, I wasn't – sometimes you're at games, you're just like, man, this is dragging. It's taking forever. Let's get this on with. And I didn't think that once this weekend. I don't know how much of that helped, but I don't think it hurt.
Yeah, and I think I think I saw another design this weekend, and it might have been on that Stephen Scotch's page. I think he might have had a different where he did a little tweet of something that they're coming out with that's a little more slim, that's being designed. So it's something I think that they're going to experiment with. Some other teams might jump on the wagon. You know, the earpiece deal that came out last year. Maybe that didn't work as well as they wanted to. I do think it's a real thing, and it's not just pace of the game, Chris. I think it's more of that maybe not necessarily pitch stealing, it's location stealing that's going on from second base, from runners, from whatever way they can do that through hand signals or whatever. I think that's a lot of people might think that's paranoia, but that can be a huge advantage if you know, because a lot of these guys throwing 95, 96, you're sometimes guessing to begin with as far as, you know, what pitch it is. I mean, you can't guess too much, as I talked about earlier, but it location, if you know a guy's throwing in, catcher's setting up in or setting up out, if you have on that device somehow, or you can relay that the location, which I think you can do, you can say the type of pitch and also where you want the location to be. So the catcher's not having a set up early enough, the pitcher's in the stretch, than he would like to. My thoughts on it are, I think it's too early. I want to see if they're trying to slow the game down. That's number one. Number two, if it's truly a thing where they're trying to get ahead of it and not having pitches tipped. If the earpiece was being too much a distraction, if it wasn't working, And that's something maybe you can ask Coach that in your next press. I'd be very interested to know, because I just saw it I saw a picture of it. I saw a picture of Maldonado that someone tweeted, and he's got this big watch looking thing on. And I'm like, what in the world is that? What are your thoughts on it?
I noticed something. I saw Chris Maldonado with an Apple Watch on after the game. I thought that's odd. I haven't gotten a chance to ask him yet because I didn't really know all that stuff until I think after the weekend was over, and I guess it had blown up on Twitter a little bit. I did see Maldonado glancing his glove a few times, and I thought it was just, they wear wristbands for positioning or whatever, or pitch calls. So I guess I didn't realize there was more to it until afterwards. I will ask him about that at some point, probably this week. But I'll tell you something funny. I was watching MLB Network yesterday, and Harold Reynolds, who is as old school as it comes, was having a fit over it and how terrible it was. And these kids need to learn, catchers need to learn to call their own games and all that stuff. I'm like, this is not 1980 anymore.
No.
Do you really think that when you get to the big leagues that stuff's not coming from the dugout too? Or I guess it's a little different, but I just thought, I get what he's saying. He said players don't have to think for themselves anymore, but in the age of analytics and these coaches having all this data, I don't think this trend is going away. I don't think it's going back to everything being on the players again.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was just an experiment or if there's something here to stay. They're going to see how it's going to work. But yeah, there's going to be, when we're talking about Major League Baseball experimenting with robots or lasers or whatever to call strikes, I don't think there's any going back. They're going to at least try it and see, and maybe that's just what's happening here. But I'm curious to see what they think about it, how they think it helps, and if it's just more for, because Tim's a rules guy. I think he's on the rules committee, if I'm not mistaken, or has been. If this is a pace thing or if it's more of we're trying to get our guys the best advantage on the mound and not give away location or give away pitches with the quickest way possible. I'm personally not looking down at the wristband every time. Last year that some of those teams were doing it, just got a little old, but it takes a second or two. It's fine. But I'll be very interested to see what they think, since it's out there and it's on the networks, to see what they think.
Well, nothing's worse than the Virginia catcher staring into the dugout for 15 seconds every time to get a sign.
Right. Now that's what that I don't like, for sure.
Okay, last one. NBA Door says, called third strikes to end both losses. Is that just a case of good pitching and the bat still adjusting, or lack of aggressiveness?
I think that goes back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. The first 5, 6, 7 minutes was talking about guessing. And, the really, really good hitters will, if they are, they won't get fooled on an 0-2 pitch, the Tony Gwynn type deal. He just fouled stuff off that he didn't like. He was that good. But what I don't want to see is taking too many 0-2 pitches or 2-strike pitches down the gut. It tends to think that you're perhaps guessing. It does tend to have someone who follows the game to think that that's what's going on. And I don't think that's what these guys hopefully have been trained to do. But at that point, just getting the ball in play. So those are those kind of old things, taking 2-strike pitches down the gut, making the third out at third. Those little tried and true thing that, as much as we talk about watches and things of baseball that are changing and robots calling behind the plate, those things are still true about baseball. That will not change. That for years, and we had another one of those this weekend. Making the third out of third, taking 2-strike pitches down the gut. Those things in baseball are tried and true. And so, but to answer his question, I just hope it's not the thing that we got guys up there guessing, because if they are, they're in for a long couple of weeks until they work it out.
Yeah. Gosh, there's one more thing here, and I think I've forgotten it. So I'll just go ahead and give it to you to close out. And of course, tell people about Fridrich and Clark, which is your real estate business, as you do that as well.
Sure. I'll just do that close, Chris. Fridrich and Clark Realty, big Vanderbilt supporters, our real estate company. We also have an insurance agency here Our office is in Green Hills, but 2 locations one in Brentwood, one in Green Hills. We've got 180 agents, and we're happy to help all sorts of Vanderbilt fans, SEC fans, to their buying and selling of homes. The market is really tough right now, with there not a lot of inventory on the Nashville real estate market, whether it be condos or homes. There's just not a whole lot out there, and the prices are still very inflated, as they are across the country. But interest rates are still good. If you find the right home, it's just a matter of dealing with making an offer on a home, or if you're selling, dealing with the multiple offers that you're probably going to get in selling a house. What does that mean to you? You need a professional to help you through the process, to help you through the red tape, to get you the best money for your home as far as on the selling side, or one of our 180 agents to help you solidify your contract and put it in position that are better than everybody else's. So I urge you to give me a ring at 615-327-4800. We'll walk you through the process. I'll hook you up with one of our great agents, professional agents. This is what they do for a living. They're not out there selling one house a year. These are professionals who know what they're doing. Check us out on the web at frederickandclark.com. You can Google that and put in Frederick and Clark Real Estate. It'll take you to the site. And we'd love to help the listeners out.
Chip, thanks a bunch. We'll see you soon.
We will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.